Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shay Douglas, and I want to welcome you to an episode of Through the Syntropic Lens. Today we got two amazing, incredible, inspiring human beings, one in Souvereign and the other one in Fred, who are amazing men working towards positive solutions to regenerate, to look at the world through a lens of understanding how we've done it originally as traditional people, as Indigenous people of the land. And we're going to apply that to a more modern context and look at how we today together can work towards positive solutions for community, for others, for ourselves, and for our environment, for the earth beneath our feet. So it's really, really exciting. These two men are going to join me in this conversation. I've got some really quite enticing questions to ask to open up the conversation. And these two men have quite deep comprehension around what is going on in the world. But again, through this podcast, through the Syntropic lens, we really explore looking at the world through a lens of how would we do it in nature? What does it look like to live in harmonious relationship with the natural world? And so really exciting to bring in Fred and Souvereign. Here they are, gentlemen. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, guys.
Before we get deep into the conversation, I'm curious, how did you guys meet, and what was that, initial, connection, and how did that, blossom into? Because you guys have known each other for a number of years now, and have been supporting each other. Been these little light pods in different parts of the world, and working towards your own little cultivating your own environment and your own little ecosystems, and it's coming into full fruition and full blossom today. And I'm just curious, what was that first seed planted in that first connection point?
Well, for me, I didn't see it coming, but Fred already knew that when he met me, that we were going to do awesome shit together. That's what he literally said. So, you don't know me, I see what you're doing, I'm going to come back up here. And I was in the Recharge Coranda Hub at the time, and running a local food community supported agricultural network. And boy, did he come back up, and did we do awesome stuff together. We connected on so many levels. Fred, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I was living in Melbourne at the time, and a professional musician traveling a lot interstate and internationally, and it sort of got to the point where I didn't feel like I needed to be in Melbourne any longer. Most of my shows were taking me out of Melbourne, and how I ended up coming and visiting Far North Queensland was through coming up during the winter. They had some really amazing sort of outdoor transformative music festivals, and it was on one of those visits that I met Sherwood. And on a concurrent visit, the third time I came up, I went and visited a friend's land, and for the first time, I think the first time ever, when I went to that land and I set foot on it, I stood out of the car, I got really clear guidance, and it was almost a voice. I don't know how to describe it. I was basically just, you are to move here, to that land specifically, not Far North Queensland. And it was that overwhelming that I mentioned it to my friend, and I felt a bit silly, and he was also feeling the same thing really strongly. And so it took about a year from then for me to wind up all my stuff, and we bought an old fire truck with a big Pantech on the back and packed all our stuff, and we drove on up. And by that stage, Sherwood and I had met a couple of times, and we ended up moving to Speewah, which is just the next area over from Coranda, and he was very active in the markets there, running this regenerative food network. And I just saw what he was up to and said, yeah, what can I do? How can I help, Uncle? And so, I suppose I for a while there, I felt like I was your right-hand man.
Yeah, no, it's great memories there. Down memory lane, accomplished some really epic growth spurts in my own evolution, and fostered just this beautiful relationship that then lasts, for here we are today, and it doesn't go away. It just gets nicer. So,
and something else I think that's interesting to point out was that I think that Sherwood and I both have natural leadership skills, but it's really beautiful when when two people that meet with leadership skills. I suppose what I'm trying to say is that I really saw what you were doing, Shuad, and saw your vision, and just aligned with it, and it was just such a beautiful thing to be able to just to be able to just basically follow you, and so there are other times where I've been in that place where I feel like I'm holding a vision and others come around, but it's just really beautiful to acknowledge that that's not a fixed space to be that visionary or that leader, that there are times where a visionary will connect with another visionary or leader, and it will be really evident that it's time to follow and to support. And I just think that's worth speaking to. That's we will get into it, but collaborative leadership is kind of a core value and principle of the project we're running here at Arcoora, and we can talk more about that later. But yeah, it's something I'm really passionate about is communication, leadership, and collaboration. Yeah, so we'll talk about some of the programs in here that encourage that. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful, Fred. Thanks for sharing. And Souvereign, just to give us that backstory, I'm really curious to explore what that vision is moving forward, particularly with what you're doing on the land there, Fred, with the Arcoora project. It's really exciting for me just to unpack this a little bit more and share with our viewers who are watching in. And I just want to acknowledge those who are watching live with us now. I just want to thank you for joining us. And just leave us a comment. Let us know where you are watching from in the world. It's a global audience, so people tune in from all over the world. I'd be curious to hear where you're joining us from. And if you have any questions for these gentlemen, because they are, holding down this metric for a new Earth. We're moving through a huge transitional time here on Earth, and so many things unraveling as we speak. Changes never happened so rapidly, it seems to me, and what you guys, this vision that I want to just like flesh out a little bit, that you guys are sharing, that you're really holding down on the land, is something really I'm curious to just explore a little bit more in depthly how that looks, because what I understand about the Arcoora project is that it's this environment, it's this land space, this ecosystem of people living on the land, living with the land, and regenerating the land. So it's a art and ecology training ground, as I understand. But I'm curious, Fred, could you maybe share a little bit of what Arcoora is and how this vision that you share with a Souvereign here is in alignment to working towards a new Earth kind of experience for all people on the planet right now?
For sure. Yeah, well, look, first, I think I'd like to just acknowledge the traditional owners of this land. We are on Gullybowl country here, and I and our team here, we are custodians on behalf of Uncle Andrew, who is a Gullybowl elder, but he's not just an elder of this land. He has a very unique and special connection personally with this land for a number of reasons. This land has always been a training ground, actually. So it was a very, very important place for training for the entire Bundjalung Nation, which is spans from it's a huge area. It's 13 mob that spans from, I think, Newcastle all the way out past Brisbane. And so for the entire Bundjalung Nation, this mountain, this land was very, very special for them. And then in addition to that, about 35 years ago, a lama from Bhutan, a Rinpoche, I should say, Dongar Kensky Rinpoche, visited here upon invitation, and he wasn't the first Buddhist lama to visit. The lady that owned the title on the land had a vision that this would become a Buddhist temple, and Dongar Kensky Rinpoche came and visited, and he agreed to support the building of a Buddhist temple and a Buddhist community here. And so the guests are, and so just to tie that into Uncle Andrew, he was part of that Buddhist community. So he, for the whole 30 years that the Buddhists were operating this as a Buddhist retreat center, he was actively involved and came and helped support in the construction of some of the facilities here. He did a 3-month silent retreat here, and he was invited regularly to participate in the Buddhist activities here. So it's a very important place for the entire Bundjalung Nation, for the Gullybowl people whose land this is their land, and for him personally as a Gullybowl elder. And for the 6 years that we've been here, we've been slowly and respectfully and cautiously engaging him and earning his trust and his respect and support. And we feel like it's our greatest asset as a project to have his full support now. He's been and visited weekly now for 3 months, and that means he's been participating in a huge variety of the programs that have been running here. And we're so deeply honored to have him as a friend, a mentor, an uncle, and and just to have his full support and blessings with everything that's going on. So that's a good place to start, is just to acknowledge Uncle Andrew and the Gullybar people, and to acknowledge the Buddhists that were here for 30 years. They ran 2 events here that were very significant for the Buddhist community globally. Specifically, I can't remember off the top of my head the lineage. It is written on our website, but they ran 2 retreats that went for 3 years, 3 months, 3 days, 3 hours, 33 minutes, and 33 seconds, and they were virtually in silence, other than some interactions with the Rinpoche. And I think there was around 30 participants for the first event, and a higher number for the second event. And it was at the end of that second 3-year retreat that the Rinpoche, his commitments externally. He has a number of monasteries that he's responsible for in Bhutan, and he's also he gained some fame through creating a film. So originally he was a consultant on the film Little Buddha, with I think that's with Keanu Reeves, and he got the filmmaking bug, and he made a film called The Cup, which is about monks that play soccer, and it won the Cannes Film Festival. And so he became quite a well-known filmmaker in addition to his other responsibilities. So for all of those reasons, and the fact that the Buddhist community who were sort of around this project, who lived in the other residencies at the bottom of the hill, they were kind of getting on into their 60s and were finding it challenging to manage the property. So it was time to move it on. And so there was a 2-year period where the facility wasn't being used, and we were negotiating and kind of putting proposals to the Buddhist community about what we wanted to do here, which was essentially a center for ecological and cultural regeneration. And we arrived here about 6.5 years ago, and it's taken a really long time to give the project momentum and for the project to have legs. And we are there finally. We are really having an impact and running some fantastic programs, and we are regenerating the ecology and regenerating the culture. And we've got a number of initiatives that are reaching out into the wider regional community. And it's quite interesting. There's like concentric rings of community. We don't consider Arcoora a community; it's a project. But there are a community of people around that project, some of whom spend more time on the land than others who come in for different programs and working bees and different things like that. And then the retreat center sits on a multiple occupancy community called Gesar Springs, and there's 15 shares beyond the retreat center. So there's 15 families or couples or individuals living at the base of the mountain. And so we are a part of that community. And then we are in Collins Creek, and we're just down the road from the Collins Creek Town Hall, and it's a really active community. They do some amazing stuff. Just this weekend gone, they organized a free first aid course, full-day first aid course for the entire Collins Creek community, and had about 40, 50 participants come, and they got a grant for that. And then we're part of the wider Kyogle community as well. And then we're part of the Northern Rivers community, which is our bioregion, I suppose. And so it's really interesting to just acknowledge those concentric rings of community, and we have different approaches and different programs that we engage each ring of that community. Yeah.
So thanks so much for sharing, Fred. So I'm curious to hear, Fred spoke a little bit earlier around the vision that he was inspired to initiate this project that he's really like full force committed to and working towards. Could you share maybe a little bit around what that vision looked like then, maybe how it's changed now, maybe if you feel there's, potentially more a little universal push towards that vision for the greater community or for many people in the world based upon current events that are happening in the world and what that vision looks like moving forward?
Well, it's a question that really goes to the heart of the members, of course, at Arcoora. But from a kind of more universal and human ecological place, we all have these seeds within us, this knowing, this drive, but it benefits maturing. And so when we first cast our vision or we first receive it as individuals and we see that we want to do something different, we go on that hero's journey and we go on that adventure, and we have to deal with our own internal dynamics and then the dynamics of those that we have chosen to navigate that initial startup with. And I feel that as we as humans kind of grow and mature in the process of engagement and exploring what works and what sticks and what doesn't stick and what actually is really relevant and what isn't relevant. Life is a process. There's no shortcuts in life. And something that I really gained out of syntropic agroforestry is that everything works in succession. And so there may be the first pioneering kind of energy. And if you just heard what Fred said about the Buddhist community having been there for 30 years, and that was a huge succession that came before. And now they've stepped into what they are doing. And that required a lot of exploration and a lot of clarification on the internal sense of being. And then naturally what happens in my own experience in communities is that as we stay longer somewhere, the natural and organic connections start emerging. You can, but it just doesn't work that way in life, where you move yourself into a new area and you go and network with a whole bunch of people and you plug yourself into as many things and pots and places as you can. There's no real fortitude and resiliency in that in the longer term, because it has to kind of organically move forward. And that's where we as humans are just part of a living metric. And I'm super inspired. It was a year and a half the last time that I was there with Fred, and just to see the growth from when I first came there, and then before I went on my epic hero's adventure to Vanuatu, it was just so inspiring to see how we evolve and how striking the similarities in our development as to what is relevant. And in that also recognizing that it's also really very much part of a kind of like a human path, a human hero's journey. And I know that there's not many that are necessarily taking that path, but both Fred and I were definitely putting our light out there to say, go take that call to adventure, go follow that. Do not deny the call of spirit when you feel it, when you feel spoken to, you don't know how to even put that into words. Be willing to listen to that, because we do, well, for how I feel like, if I relate to my past 10 years and how that's prepared me for where I am today, we came here for this. And so it's just epic. Fred, fill in some points here if you feel called.
I'm just going to quickly move inside because I'm getting mauled by mosquitoes here. Yeah, so I mean, it was interesting. A year and a half ago, Sjoerd visited, and he mentioned a fellow that we were familiar with. I think we'd actually even made contact by that point, and that was Tiago Barbosa. Is that how you say his surname? And that was a gentleman that Sjoerd had got up to Far North Queensland. And I don't spend much time on social media, but in that period where you were running those Syntropic agroforestry courses up north, I was getting messages from you, and I was watching it. I wasn't sure what it was all about, but your visit here was was amazing and synchronistic and jam packed. And the parting message was, you need to get Tiago here. You need to get Syntropic agroforestry going, and so we did. And it actually, it's a bit of a story, but it happened kind of mid lockdown. We ended up with a large group of people here on the property throughout the lockdown, and we couldn't really open the event up to the public, but there was enough of us here to make it worthwhile to do the workshop here. So we sort of spent basically the whole of lockdown was a Syntropic lockdown. We spent 2 months clearing an area and felling trees, and chopping them all up to put into the rows as a store of biomass. And we had Hamish, who had visited with Should, and Hamish is an old brother from up in Far North Queensland that's done quite a bit of this work with Should. And it wasn't long after. It was really interesting how it all kind of came together at Earth Frequency Festival in mid-Feb. I was watching what was happening with COVID, and I could just see the whole thing. And so I actually approached Hamish at the festival and said, "This is what's going down. 10% of the world's population has been locked down in China in the form of 700 million people being, having their movement restricted. This is unprecedented in our lifetime. If you're available, I'd love you to come and join us. I think that there's a really good chance that we're going to be sticking in place for a while." And so he did. So he came and he led the preparation for the workshop, and Tiago came out and ran that with us. And so that was our first real deep dive into Syntropic agroforestry. And now we're deep in it. Not just specifically Syntropic agroforestry, but also successional agroecology and other regenerative agriculture fields that draw on very similar principles. So thanks for that, Uncle. Thanks for the.
That's my job. That's my little function in the world, to go and insert syntropic ways into people's minds, plant those seeds. But the good thing is that with Fred, I was just able to speak my truth freely and fully. I don't tell people really what they need or what they have to do, because I don't like to speak on behalf of other people. But we've got this awesome constellation where he's one of those few people that he can call me up and say, "You need to go do this," and I'll be like, "Okay, sure." Many other people can tell me that, and I'll be like, "Yeah, thank you for sharing how you're feeling." And so in our constellation, there's this beautiful openness. We recognize that we make the most use of each other's time and availability, and we speak when it's relevant. And when we feel inspired and we want to encourage the other to look at something, we can just go directly in, and then it's heard, it's received, and it's acted upon. And
it really is amazing, because the whole time that was happening, there was like a number of times where I'm like, I really should reach out to Should and like let him know that we're doing it, and that Hamish has been here for 3 months now, and that I didn't really I had the thought that maybe I should, but then I was like, no need, we'll talk when we need to. And I'm sure he knows that it's all it's all apples. But that that I didn't even feel the need to check in and share. Just like, okay, yep, you do that, all right, I'll do that. Great.
Epic.
Yeah. So Syntropic in the relationship.
Tiago had an amazing experience here. He said that out of all the places that he'd worked with, he felt that the culture here was like the clearest, and he was amazed at the way that we all worked together. And we've got a long-term collaboration with him lined up now, and we'll be running regular events. There's one coming up. I'm not sure if the date is locked in, but if it is, it will be in our calendar on the website.
I love that. So good. Thanks for sharing, gentlemen. It's really exciting, because that, when you were speaking to Earth Frequency in 2020, that's over a year ago now, and fast track 14 months, and starting on Monday starts the Grounded Permaculture Retreat, which is the lead up to Earth Frequency Festival 2021, and I'll be visiting the Ipswich for this retreat and for the festival this year, where Tiago will be teaching, also Hamish will be facilitating, and it's really exciting because it's bringing together a whole community of people who are committed and inspired to really play a positive contribution, play a role within this hugely shifting culture, this shifting world that we're all a part of. And something that I'm curious to explore further with you, Fred, and Sovereign, is when you spoke to having these kind of impulses towards what's coming in the future and recognizing that these are unprecedented times, whether we, agree or like it or not, things are changing and changing right before our eyes. And so something that I feel is going to be relevant for those who are also watching this video right now is what steps are important for people to take in order to utilize the energy of the changes that are coming so that it can benefit a positive culture that is regenerative rather than degenerative. One that gives back out of a place of service rather than taking to consume more. And what does that, mindset look like? What does that heartfelt interaction and relating look like? What is, the kind of the new metric for this experience of life on Earth for people who would love to be a part of a positively changing system? Curious to hear from you there, Fred.
Yeah, look, I think it's interesting that you've divided it into those two categories. The kind of the practical approach and the I suppose the approach in terms of the way we communicate, the way we relate. And I feel like sitting here with Shuard, it's really interesting. Like those are our complementary strengths. Is that Shuard is deeply passionate and skilled and knowledgeable in that area of relating, communicating, connecting, sharing, collaborating, and on this team of two, I'm perhaps the more on the ground, really practical. Not to say that we both don't have strength in both areas, but I'm really I'm really passionate about the practical approaches, and I'd love to share what I'm not saying this flippantly. One of the two best resources that I have ever found on the internet is an Australian website written by a guy who's based in the Blue Mountains, and it's a very easy website to remember. It's called survival.org.au, and it's focused around permaculture, natural living skills, and I suppose like a transition basically. And it's an incredible resource. I mean, he has a section of books where he reviews 200 books on permaculture, on like field guides for all different animals. He'll have 4 different bird guides and why he likes each one for different things. It's a really amazing resource, but there are 2 pages in particular that are quite long, and I think give a really grounded overview on how to prepare for these times in terms of pragmatic, practical approach. And so the first one is just at the top of the website. I think it's called Start Here. And then there's another one another article that's called How to Prepare for the Coming Economic Collapse. And I think what we have to understand is that I think it's around 10% of the population use about 50% of the energy on in the world, and really that those the majority of those, I'd probably say all of the people tuning into this have access to an internet connection, a laptop or a mobile phone, and are connected with a community that have kind of brought them here. We are in that 10%. We are the people that have to make the most change. It is this modern technological consumer-based culture that is causing the problems on the planet. And so as we go through collapse or transition, whatever you want to call it, we are going to have to change the most. Our lifestyles will change the most radically. And so there's a fantastic book written by David Holmgren, one of the founders of permaculture. The name eludes me right now. It's his most recent book, but it's a coffee table book just about downsizing, basically, how to do more with less, how to do all of those permaculture things: reuse, recycle, repair, borrow. That's the world that we're moving into. And so the thing that I love about his website is, I don't know if he has a background in psychology, but it's beautifully laid out in that it sort of talks about things like the hedonistic treadmill, where we get a little dopamine reward every time we sort of buy something new or learn something new, and that he encourages you to take advantage of that, and to at the moment in our culture, all of the things that we get rewarded for are inverted. They're all of the things that are worst for our culture, worst for our ecology. And so if we can acknowledge that and make movements to slowly get that dopamine reward and become passionate and become excited about things like natural living skills and fixing, repairing things, thrifting, I mean, one of the projects that we've initiated here alongside another not-for-profit in Kyogle is that the tip shop in Kyogle had lain dormant for, I think, 5 or more years. So 100% of all of the waste was going into landfill. And so we paired up with another not-for-profit and approached council and put a tender to them. And we've reopened the tip shop. It's called the Kyogle Resource Initiative Collective, the CRIC. And the day that we got the go-ahead from the council, we were at a tip shop in a neighbouring area, and we found a cricket made entirely from recycled material, welded together from like the level of synchronicity was hilarious. So he's the mascot now. The crick has got a cricket that was found at a tip shop made from reused and recycled materials. But those sorts of initiatives of engaging tip shops, thrift shops, engaging a community, understanding that if you're in an urban area, you don't need to buy a ladder. There are 50 ladders within walking distance of your house. You need to meet your neighbors. You need to find out who's got a ladder and build rapport and learn to share things. And so, I wish I could remember the name of David Holmgren's book, but it's great. It's just a coffee table book that's a couple inches thick of just all the different ways, even in an urban environment, that we can really start to downsize and do more with less. And but I think that website survival.org is it's an incredible resource. And those 2 articles, Start Here and Preparing for the Economic Collapse, it's not just about the practical steps, it's also the mindset. Like, how can we approach this big and rapid change that we are in? We're not even on the precipice of it anymore. We are in it, and start to realign our values and start to become excited about the new skill sets that will be necessary. There's a piece on that.
That's beautiful, Fred. Souvereign, would you like to elaborate further on what other skill sets are necessary?
Well, what's beautiful about all this is that Fred and I have been hip to this this notion already for, I don't know, 15 years. And I started the Transition Towns Kuranda movement back in 2011. And so this has been part of people's awareness for a long time. We've been living and breathing it. We've just been getting better at kind of honing in our own crafts, honing in our own abilities. And really, it's also a process of really training. And as Fred said, with that dopamine kind of hitting, I never really got excited about fixing things, because I was raised and brought up in a culture where you can just throw things away and buy a new one because it's going to be better. Actually, the quality is always less. But now that I've come sort of to really embody much more of what I initially kind of spoke about and wanted more than anything other people to get really active in, I'm totally enjoying the simplistic nature of my life, tinkering and fixing things and making sure that it doesn't just get discarded. Not so much because I'm trying to save the environment. I'm trying to upgrade. Well, it's not a trying. I'm doing it. I'm upgrading my resiliency, my sovereignty, my abilities, and re-enabling those innate abilities on how to. Okay, so my electrical switch is broken. Well, I could go and call somebody to fix it because I'm renting a place, or I could just be like, let's look up some diagrams and see how I fix this myself. And I think that that's something that for us as men predominantly would be something that can enliven us. And it's in those practical skills that we feel more grounded in who we are, in the place where we are. We feel more connected, we feel more clear, and we feel that we have more, with an expanded awareness of what our skills and abilities are. We can apply ourselves in way more fields than staying in this kind of boxed societal framework. So for me, I see that where we're going over the next, let's call it 2 years, we're having a forced greater reset happening. And that's just what's planned. Whether we like that or not, we can get all upset about it, about, the Davos mammals that are calling for that. It's something that is in the making. And it's really all about how do you make use of the function. Okay, so you can first experience fear or anger or resentment or I'm being controlled. It's like, yeah, well, at some point we benefit getting out of that victim mentality and holding that part of ourselves and saying, I hear you, I feel you, and now what do you want to do? And that's the main question. What do you want to do? We can talk all about other people and what they're not doing and what's not happening. And it's like, that's all rhetoric that Fred and I basically nipped in our own, kind of nip it in the bum, is what we did pretty early on. It's like just keep applying ourselves to the change that we want to see. Well, we know we have to be that change. How do I exemplify that? And how do I just keep myself in a process of constant and never-ending improvement? And I love that Japanese principle. I think it's called kanai. And as one of the people that I know on this earth that is ever inspired to keep informing his cells, upgrading his cells, hacking his biome, to increase the thrivality that we can embody. Yeah, Fred's been a huge inspiration, and that's something that I think is what we can carry out into the world, is to kickstart other people's. We can't kickstart anybody. It's always a choice. But I do sense that we can be that voice of reason and that voice that basically says, hey, what are you choosing? And why are you staying in the place where you are? Or how are you transforming the place that you have? And nobody's going to come in and do it for us. That's the beautiful thing about being here as human beings on the earth, is it's us coming into our power to apply ourselves. And to me, the metric is not just the head, and it's not just feeling based. It's, it's hands, heart, and our heads all combined. That for me allows a human being to really become an activated and enabled agent of change in the ecology that is around him or her. And it becomes really interesting when we start intermingling living human ecology with that, as in community. And that's why I find it so inspiring what Fred's doing, and why I'm so stoked that we're here, because for me, community and exploring the endeavor of community is probably one of the most relevant endeavors that we as human beings can participate in, whether that is co-living, whether that is communal living, whether that is co-working consciously. And I'm putting the emphasis on conscious, because if we're just doing it because, we need to just share rent, or then we're just still somewhere in a treadmill, just hopping around. It's like consciously exploring, how do we do this? And my field is human ecology, which is becoming syntropic human ecology. How do we, how? And the answers are very much rooted in our indigenous knowings, and our forebears on the land of Australia and where I am here in Bali, that they all know how simple it is. They don't even have a language for it, but they live a living culture that is resilient, that is abundant, and that is able to absorb the impacts of this Western kind of cult programming and still sustain and maintain its own spiritual connection to land, to the mountains, to the forests, to each other, to the spiritual reality of this world. And to me, it is all those components that in human ecology are to be explored in order for us to gain clarity of who we are, how we got here, and what really benefits us engaging in what we want to create, what we want to experience. And we have a tremendous opportunity during this time to really ask those questions. What do you want to experience? Is where you at? Is that what you want to experience? Because it's up to you to make your life become that expression of transformation that you want for yourself and that you want to see in the world. And that's what Fred and the Arcoora community for me are just a lighthouse for, in a very humble, very natural way. It's not like putting themselves out in a way like, come and look at us, because we are there internal. And then from that place, effortlessly, in my own experience, things ripple out. And yeah, that excites me.
Lovely. Thanks, Souvereign, for sharing that. I'm just going to pull up the Arcoora website here so our viewers can get a little look in. And Fred, I'd be curious to hear for you what like initiatives, regenerative initiatives, Syntropic. You kind of spoke to some of the events coming up with Tiago, but for 2021, what can we look forward to that's happening there that people could potentially participate in and be involved in?
So much awesome stuff. I'm so excited. This year is the year that we have partner organisations that we invite to use the facilities here if we're aligned with the work that they're doing. But this year is the year that our own sort of internal in-house programs have really taken flight. And right now, something particularly exciting is happening. We have teamed up with an international not-for-profit called Ecosystem Restoration Camps. And we have become one of around 40 camps around the world, and we are currently hosting Australia's first ecosystem restoration camp. And so it finishes up sort of today. All of the participants from the ERC will be going over to Renew Fest in Mullumbimby, which is just a great conscious weekend-long event with speakers and yoga and these sorts of things. And so our whole team's going to volunteer to help run that event, and that sort of represents the end of the ERC. And it's been absolutely incredible. We wanted to design a program that really gave people lots and lots of different experiences in regenerative culture, but also practical stuff that they could go home and use themselves. So there's been, they've gone into town, into the local tree nursery and spent an entire day there learning about propagation and food forests. They've gone in and spent a day with the local land care office in town. We've got a huge regenerative project that's ongoing, like multi-year project, building koala habitat on the property, and we managed to line that up with a public event where ecologists came and members of the public came onto community lands and looked at the work that's already been done and participated in more of the work that's coming. We've been sharing amazing meals together, amazing conversations together, and the main, I suppose, outcome that we had planned for this event was to go around the site and identify areas where we've got regenerative programs planned and do a bunch of baseline testing. So we've been testing soil carbon, soil water retention, biodiversity, and a number of other things that now we will be testing regularly, I think every 6 months, in those areas as we activate those areas. So we've got another 3 ERCs. ERC is the Ecosystem Restoration Camp. We've got 3 more planned for this year. And then every year from then on, we'll be running 6 of them a year. So 6 one-month-long camps where anybody can come and get involved and not only, I suppose, get their get their feet wet in all of the different areas of regenerative culture, both social and ecological, but also come and experience what it feels like to live, in a community on land, and to be prepping meals together as a group, and eating together and sitting around the fire and singing songs, and just to come and connect with the culture of this place. So the next ERC, if you just go down a little bit from where you are, is keep going. That's it. So it's there'll be more information about that. That's coming up 9th of June. And just before that, if you scroll up, this is a program that we run for men that I'm particularly excited about. This is something that I've been leading. And this is with, you can click on that. So this is with a facilitator, Jamie Simpson, who also goes by Jar. And he spent more than half of his 50-odd years living closely with Indigenous peoples around Australia. He's been initiated into mob in southeast Victoria, in Western Australia, and also in the centre. And he's a man that holds an enormous. If you scroll down, you'll see a photo of him. He holds a deep reverence for Indigenous knowledges and Indigenous law, and he's a wealth of information around all things natural living. That's his book, his self-published bush foods book. It's the best Australian bush foods book I've come across, and I'm really passionate about that stuff. And so a group of men come together, and for 3 full days we learn to make stone tools and wood tools. We learn to find resources in the land, food, and learn, bushcraft, I suppose. And we spend about half the time in circle, just talking about tribal law and the way that Indigenous people were able to live for 100,000 plus years in relative peace, regeneratively. And Uncle Andrew, we just held the first one of these a few months back, and as always, we just put an open invitation to Uncle Andrew to come and check it out and participate and do a welcome to country. And he usually comes and just quietly sees if it's on the right track, and if it is, then he offers further support. And he did. He ended up staying for the entire day and then came back the next day. So he was there and there's a group of us there. Uncle Andrew just off center, and so that's we'll be running around about probably 6 of these a year, and that's a program that's open to men. And there is a sister project that is doing a similar thing with Auntie Carly, who's the Gullybull female elder, and so they've been doing a women's group. And it actually happened by chance that they happened both of the first ones happened the same time. So the first men's camp that we held here on men's land, there was a women's camp held on women's land, not far from here, about an hour from here. And so we hope to line those up and to be running those not only in parallel, but to work it out that we can have the men's and women's camp happening separately, but then everybody coming together for a few days post that. Really just exploring, natural, simple living and tribal law and tribal culture. So that's another program that, I personally am really just deeply honoured to be hosting that, and to have found such a school of people. If anyone's interested in that, you can check out both of those programs on the website.
That is epic, exciting calendar you got to look forward to in 2021, Fred. I just want to thank you for your time today, joining us, and thank those who are watching with us right now. Fred, love seeing what you're creating. Souvereign, I love what you share all the time. I just really wanted to pull and share this quote that I got from your website from Joanne Macy, who says, "Grace happens when we act with others on behalf of our world." A beautiful quote to take home. And do you gentlemen have any leaving messages that you would like to share with the audience before we call it a day?
I do, just quickly. I'm sure Uncle does too. Something I think perhaps that I really learned from you, Sovereign, is that you can do a lot with a little. And in Recharge Veranda, we ran off nothing but the goodwill of the community. You know, it was all volunteer and just wrangling whatever resources we could together to do whatever we could, and we did a lot. And when we landed here on this project, 6.5 years ago, we didn't have any startup capital. We landed with just the infrastructure that was here and nothing but a lot of enthusiasm. And it is amazing what you can do with very little. You know, we are completely volunteer run, and we are absolutely shoestring, and all of the funds that are generated from the events just go back into the project. And I wouldn't have had it any other way. I feel like if we landed here with 100 grand or more sort of seed capital, we wouldn't have had the lessons, and we wouldn't have been able to see like really what is possible with just community and vision. So I just want to encourage everybody, don't let resources, like monetary resources or land resources or anything like that, stop you from taking action. It's incredible what we can do when we just rally together around a vision and an idea and a purpose, and that vision just simply has to be regenerating ecology and regenerating culture. And I'm stoked to be doing this work with you guys.
It's great. Yeah, awesome, Fred. So spot on. Yeah, for me, I just eliminated that if this then that narrative. If I have this, then I can do that. And it's like, no, if that's what you want, just move towards it, and work with what you have, as opposed to waiting for that other to come into your reality. And it's been an interesting metric. Probably doesn't work for a tremendous amount of people that are still in a mainstream orientation, but hearing this allows them to see that there's so much more possible. There's actually so much more available. And for me, that brings it back to the syntropic orientation, which is that life is wired for abundance. And I noticed that I've been programmed in terms of abundance in a very kind of deductive and reductive manner, where abundance has always been monetary based or material based. And really what syntropy is, it's a state of being, it's a state of feeling, it's a state of feeling alive, and it's a state of sensing that abundance is so much more broad. It's experience, it is tactile, it is all around us. And it's in the renewal of my mind song and the replanting and the recultivating really of my mind garden through syntropic agroforestry that I got so much of what I already kind of had in place. I got that amplified to a degree where I now can feel so much more clear in how to navigate and where to put energy. And at the same time, I'm not so much directing it, it's showing up. And there's trust in that we benefit restoring in life. And for me, understanding the syntropic nature of life and applying that onto human ecology has allowed me to just no longer be like, I'll go with the flow, but being this like inner knowing that has been restored, this indigenous awareness, that the innate coming from within, that I am connected to life, and life is operating on these principles and these strategies. And in that knowing, I can reside and rest. And then life just shows up, and life has the capacity to come in because I'm not limiting it by my limited belief systems. And I just want to thank Fred for sending me this awesome PDF that you sent just the other week. It's on radical human ecology, and it's been one of my books that has really been my study ground for the last 4 years. I silently am just, going through my own process of how to recultivate myself within. So if anybody feels attracted to learn more about our human ecology and how it benefits a radical different approach, a radical orientation that is allowing us to look from an indigenous perspective into our Western cult programmed worldviews, we can see that a lot of what we have been operating on benefits just being put to the side and actually start picking up the tools that have worked for thousands and thousands of years. And Fred is fully immersed in that and is becoming an emissary for that. And to me, that is just, yeah, this is where it is at.
So good. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Really appreciate what you are contributing to the world right now. And thanks for joining us in this conversation. It's so nice to have these positive, inspiring chats around how we can all contribute back to regenerative ways, more syntropic ways. And yeah, it's really exciting. So appreciate your time, gentlemen. Hope you have the best day and look forward to hearing from you soon.
Awesome.
Happy.
Yeah, be happy to come back and do another one of these whenever you guys like. This is great chat.
Thanks, Fred.
Awesome. Cheers.